Sit back, it's time to get groovy. Question, do you remember that movie?
Welcome back to Remember That Movie, and welcome to 2025.
Happy New Year.
I am still the third Alejandro Rosa on IMDb.
And I am Steve Johnston, and I am still not on IMDb.
Welcome back to another episode and another movie. This is the podcast where we look at the films of the past with the eyes of today.
They spoke to us once, obviously because we remember them, so now we go back and say, is it still good?
So that's our whole point. That's our whole podcast, other than Steve and I finding an excuse to hang out together.
Yes.
For this particular episode, the choice was Steve's. Steve, tell the people, what are we talking about today?
We are kicking off the new year with 1980's Flash Gordon. Now, when I told you that we were doing Flash Gordon, you smiled, and you did kind of this laughing nod that I have seen you do before. So I am assuming you were at least somewhat familiar with this title when I mentioned it, yes?
Good question. So
I know, that's why I asked it. Sorry.
So I watched Flash Gordon in the past. And when I say past, I mean I was 100% a child.
Okay.
And I did not understand it. And it was very exciting for me. And the reason I smiled was because I have these vague recollections of pieces of Flash Gordon that still float around in my brain.
Excellent.
In the dirty back files. Wait, that
Yes.
sounded bad.
It's not that the files themselves are dirty, it's that the cabinets in which they are stored are kind of
Correct.
dusty
It
and,
just
and
sounded
full of
really
cobwebs.
pornographic unintentionally. Okay, do that again. The reason that I smiled is because many, many years ago, when I was a little boy, I watched Flash Gordon, and to tell you the truth, I didn't understand it.
Okay.
It seemed like some sort of superhero comic book movie, but I was very confused as a small boy, and then I never watched it again. And so when you said Flash Gordon, my brain brought up these vague images of this film with people with wings and a blonde guy and music that was still in my brain. But I couldn't put all the pieces together. I didn't remember the film truly.
Okay.
I just had glimpses of it. And I remember thinking that as a child, I didn't get it. And so I was really curious as a grown-up. It's like, oh, maybe now I'll get it. So that is my experience with Flash Gordon. But you picked this.
I did.
And clearly you're excited about it. So tell me and the people, why did you pick this film? What is your personal history with Flash Gordon?
I am assuming that I was slightly older than you when I first saw it, because I too first saw it when I was young, introduced to it by my dad, as you know, a lot of movies were back in those days. And I remember loving it because it was essentially like a Saturday morning cartoon, but in real life. And that was fascinating. And it led to rewatches over the years. As I got older, I would watch it every now and then, and I would appreciate more each time that I saw it. The costume design, the set design, and, as you say, the music. So, watched it every so often for several years, and loved it, and then stopped, and hadn't seen it in quite some time, and I thought that now was as good a time as any to go back, rewatch it, and see if I enjoyed it as much as I did back when I was younger.
Well, to start us out,
Yes.
why don't you give us a brief synopsis of this film for the uninitiated into the Flash Gordon world?
I will gladly do so, and I am going to, as has become our tradition, read you the description from the back of the VHS, which I believe to be back from the 1980s. Here we go. Flash Gordon, an outer space fantasy adventure, is based on the world-famous comic strip which comes to life with action, romance, comedy, and music by the popular rock group Queen. When energy waves pull the moon out of orbit, threatening destruction of the Earth, Dr. Hans Zarkov makes a desperate rocket flight with 2 unwilling passengers. Flash Gordon, quarterback for the New York Jets, and lovely Dale Arden. Their destination is the planet Mongo, the source of the strange energy waves. Ruling over Mongo with primeval brutality is Ming the Merciless, who must be destroyed. Only one person can do it. He is Flash Gordon.
That's it?
That's it.
You know what? That's apt.
It's accurate. It glosses over a hell of a lot of details, but it's accurate.
I will start this episode by saying that I have more questions than statements.
Okay.
Because this film made me question a lot of things. And I don't understand at all. I still don't understand at all. Where would you like to begin, Lord Steve?
I want to start by going way back to the beginning and stating that Flash Gordon was created as a comic strip that you would see in newspapers in 1934 when Alex Raymond, who was a staff artist at King Features Syndicate, put pen to paper and created the character inspired by and as a rival to Buck Rogers, because the publisher looked at the success of Buck Rogers and said, we want some of that action too. And thus, Flash Gordon was born. Then we jump ahead to 1968 and enters into the scene famed Italian producer Dino De Laurentiis.
Who shows up a lot in our podcast.
Because, he has shown up before, yes?
Yes, he has shown up multiple times.
Where? Do you remember which ones were his?
I think he had to do with the Beastmaster, but I could be mistaken.
I want to say that he was somehow involved in Assassins as well.
He was the first person who wanted to buy Assassins.
Okay.
He was like the first offer, and then he got outbid. He's a big Hollywood producer.
Yes, big Italian producer. During the course of his career, he produced or co-produced over 500 films.
He was a very busy man.
Yes, indeed. And from every account that I have read of him, very energetic and enthusiastic, almost to a fault. Like kind of overly so when it comes to making a project that he was really into. So in 1968, he produces 2 movies that are based on comics. Danger Diabolique and a guilty favorite of mine, Barbarella. He wants to make a movie of Flash Gordon. He wants a 3rd comic book movie under his belt. He wants Italian director Federico Fellini. Fellini actually accepted and optioned the rights, but never actually did anything with it. So De Laurentiis took it back. And then a young American director approached De Laurentiis and said, well, I'll direct this movie for you. De Laurentiis said, nah, no thanks. And turned down this American director who then decided, well, okay, I'm going to go and direct my own science fiction movie. And that's how George Lucas made Star Wars. Next, De Laurentiis hired British director Nicholas Roeg, who was a fan of the comics, was on board, and spent a year doing pre-production work, presented his project to De Laurentiis, and Dino De Laurentiis didn't like it because the approach was, quote-unquote, too intellectual.
Folks, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that this movie does not suffer from that.
No, it doesn't. Next up, De Laurentiis wanted Sergio Leone. Spaghetti Western fame. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Leone was kind of interested, except for one thing. He was a fan of the comics and did not like the direction that Dino was taking it. For whatever reason, Dino De Laurentiis said, no, we are going to make this a comedy. I want to inject levity and jokes into the story. Eventually, he hires Mike Hodges, a director of both the small and large screens, and he bought on to De Laurentiis' vision of what the movie should be, and he is the one who actually went through and directed Flash Gordon. The script was written by Lorenzo Semple Jr. Have you ever heard his name before?
Don't believe so.
I had not either, but he is the gentleman who wrote the first 4 episodes, thereby setting the tone for the entire series of the Adam West Batman TV show.
Oh my.
So, campy.
Yes, very campy.
And that is what De Laurentiis wanted. The other gentleman that I wish to introduce to you is an Italian costume and set designer by the name of Danilo Donati. He worked with Fellini on a lot of Fellini's films. De Laurentiis hired him and basically gave him free rein to do whatever the heck he wanted.
He definitely had free rein, because costumes are something that came up in my notes over and over and over again.
Lorenzo Semple Jr. had a couple of comments regarding Donati and his method of working. Quote, "He was a crazed Italian who literally never read the script. The stuff he designed was fantastic, but it had nothing to do with the story." He was working on a costume for the character of Dale Arden in which she's having a dream that she's turned into a spider. And so the actress was done up with like multiple appendages and green makeup with multiple eyes. And Mike Hodges came in and said, this has nothing to do with anything we're doing. And the entire thing was scrapped. Lastly, I don't think we can get out of the production notes without mentioning the soundtrack, because De Laurentiis approached Queen to write the soundtrack. Queen watched 20 minutes of footage from the movie and then gave an enthusiastic yes, absolutely, because they were interested in writing a rock soundtrack to a non-musical movie. There were movies that had rock soundtracks, but there hadn't really been a movie where the soundtrack was rock and roll and it was not directly a musical in some way, shape, or form. And they wanted to remedy that. They were given free rein to do whatever the heck they wanted as long as it complemented the film. That was all Dino De Laurentiis asked for. I think it is an absolutely amazing soundtrack. It sticks in your head. And I know this to be true, not only because it stuck in my head, but a second ago you said you had not watched this film since you were a little boy, and you mentioned pulling out of your memory was music.
When I heard it, it felt very familiar, even though it had been over 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I still remember the music, for sure.
Let's talk about the cast, if we may. Because, my goodness, there are a lot of people in this film, a lot of big names.
Some I recognize, some I don't, so I will be very grateful for your information.
I suppose we should start with Flash Gordon himself, played by the most unknown actor, I think, in the cast, Mr. Sam Jones. This was only his second film. He was actually suggested by Dino De Laurentiis' mother-in-law, who had seen him on The Dating Game and said, oh, he'd be good. He auditioned and he beat out a couple of other notable names. Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered at one point. However, it was deemed that his Austrian accent was just going to be too much for the film to deal with. Kurt Russell auditioned, was offered the role, but upon reading the script, declined. So, Sam Jones was hired. Playing Dale Arden, the love interest, the girlfriend, the female companion.
By the end of the movie, having barely known each other, they're talking about having children.
One of the greatest proposals ever, in my humble opinion.
So bizarre.
She was played by Canadian actress Melody Anderson. Many TV credits and film credits. She actually retired from acting to become a social worker and public speaker, and she lectures on the topic of addiction and families. Rounding out our Earthlings, we have Topol, playing Dr. Hans Zarkov, Israeli actor. I want to say we've mentioned him on this podcast before, though I'm afraid, again, I could not put my finger on exactly where it might have been. So those are our intrepid Earth adventurers who head off to the planet Mongo and meet a slew of characters there. Playing Ming the Merciless, we have a brilliant Swedish actor, Max von Sydow. Over 150 films to his credit, probably most well known for The Seventh Seal, Ingmar Bergman's movie in which he plays a knight who challenges death to a game of chess. Timothy Dalton playing Prince Baron, Peter Wingard playing General Clytus, couple of Italian actresses, Ornella Muti playing Princess Aura, and Mariangela Melato playing General Carla. The last name that I want to mention is Prince Voltan, played by Brian Blessed, who has been on the podcast before. in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, because he played Robin Hood's dad for the whole of 5 minutes.
Oh my goodness, really?
Yep.
And we talked about him because he's a very famous actor.
This is one of his most remembered roles. People to this day will come up to him and ask him to say Gordon's alive in various contexts. It's kind of funny because David Cameron, the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, asked him to shout it in 10 Downing Street so that it would reverberate off the walls and inspire a cabinet meeting. He met an African tribesman halfway up Mount Kilimanjaro who asked him to say it because he recognized him. That line, the Gordon's alive, is the one that he gets the most requests to say and is probably the most quoted line from this film since it came out.
Young Timothy Dalton. Wow.
Ooh,
I recognized him. And in case anybody hasn't seen young Timothy Dalton, he's so handsome. You're like, of course you became James Bond. And yes, I know some people will be like, he's the worst James Bond. I disagree.
I disagree too.
He's so charming. He's so fascinating. He's so handsome. Even
He
with
is.
that mustache and dressed like Peter Pan.
A couple other quick notables before we actually get into discussing the movie itself. Playing Princess Aura's pet, who was named Fellini in honor of the director, Deep Roy, whom we've mentioned on the podcast before.
Who I am convinced now has 1,000 film credits to his name because he just shows up.
I think he does. He's one of those actors who is in everything. You just didn't realize that he's in everything.
I have a very tiny 6 degrees of separation, to him, which is that my friend Ravani, who lives in Hawaii, her rock band did a music video many years ago that he was in.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was probably maybe 15 years ago or something like that. And yeah, he was in it. She got to meet him.
Did you notice Richard O'Brien, who plays Prince Baron's friend? He's the bald guy who's playing the flute and then goes along with the deception to try and get Flash to escape.
Did I notice the bald guy playing the weird flute? Yes. I did, Steve. Did I notice who he was? No, I did not.
That bald man was Richard O'Brien, probably most famous for his role in Rocky Horror Picture Show as Riff Raff.
Oh my.
And then lastly, a gentleman whom you did not notice because he is on screen for the whole of maybe 10 seconds. There is a gentleman at the airfield who throws the bag into the plane and then closes the door.
Yes, you're right. I didn't notice him.
Robbie Coltrane.
Wow.
A young Robbie Coltrane.
These films are amazing, folks. You just never know who you're going to meet.
It's just, this is wild. So that is our cast. That is kind of the history of how this all came about.
I have to say,
Yes.
the music started at the beginning of this film, and I thought to myself, is this Queen? And then I thought a little later, oh yes, it is Queen. It says it on the screen.
Once you heard the first flash, it's like, yep, that's Freddie Mercury.
I was like, this sounds like Queen, but no, I was really not sure. I thought maybe it was Queen-ish, and then the credits actually say it's Queen, and I'm like,
Yes.
okay, I'm good there. And just the beginning was like, we're getting on an airplane, and look, I play for the New York Jets, and I would like to say something.
Yes.
Why don't I have a shirt that says Alejandro across the front with a lightning bolt on the back? His name is Flash Gordon, and in this universe, we pretend that's a normal name, and he has a damn shirt that says Flash on it.
One would hope.
The movie starts instantly. He's a football player. He's on a little plane with a travel agent.
May I just say that their choice of plane, which is a de Havilland Dove, is the most cartoonish-looking plane you have seen, just because the cockpit kind of sits up and above the rest of the fuselage, and it's got these gigantic windows down the side.
They're on this plane, and then there's some kind of evil guy who's like, let's cause chaos on Earth. And instantly we get a red cloud. We get
Burning hail.
Hot
Yes.
hail.
Hot
That's
hail.
the term
That's
they use.
hot hail.
Hot hail.
Yes.
Which
And-
makes me laugh so hard. And every time they brought it up, I just giggled to myself.
I also giggled at hot hail. There was one other thing that made me smirk this go around, and that is during the opening conversation between Ming and Clytus. Clytus says, "Oh, the inhabitants call it Earth." And yet, for some reason, they've got a little light on the dashboard that says earthquake.
Our right-hand man is a guy who has what I can only describe as metallic skull face.
Yes, yeah, metallic mask.
And the most posh British accent.
Yes.
He's so posh. He's so stuck up. And it's very confusing.
He was actually a character created for the movie. Clytus does not appear in the original comic that they were working from. The mask that you mentioned was a bit of a sticking point during filming. It took about 7 iterations before they managed to get it right so that he could talk without the mask going clack, 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 clack.
I will say something that kind of stood out to me was somebody, not a Ninja Turtle, saying the words cowabunga, which is said by the scientist assistant, who later tries to run away.
Yes, that's right.
And he goes, cowabunga. And I remember because I rewound it, and I said, do that again? And he said, cowabunga.
Cowabunga.
And so then I had to look it up, and it turns out that name, that word, comes back even to the show Howdy Doody.
Oh, my word, really?
And yes, as a surfer word. I wasn't allowed to do research on the film, but I was allowed to do research on cowabunga.
I'm thrilled that you did, because I did not catch that. That's awesome.
Chaos is happening on Earth.
Yep.
We have this sort of mad scientist whose name is
Dr. Hans Zarkov.
Dr. Zarkov. And he has this assistant scientist, and at some point he's like, okay, so what we need to do is we need to get on this rocket, we need to go up to space because we're being attacked. And his assistant is like, the hell we are. And then Dr. Zarkov does what any human would do, which is pulls a gun on his assistant and says, get your toothbrush or whatever. Quite possibly one of my favorite lines in this film. I have to start with just the costumes, because the costumes are its own character in this film. Not only do we have 1,000 different costumes, because we do. I have never seen so many costumes in a movie.
I am assuming that you are referring largely to the throne room scene towards the very beginning, in which representatives from each of Mongo's moons, each of the kingdoms that Ming rules over, have assembled to pay tribute. And yeah, we get everything from the Hawkmen, who are just in like leather. How would you describe it? Like,
think gladiators with wings.
yes, that's a good way of putting it. Gladiators with wings. We've got people who I'm unfortunately going to describe as kind of African tribesmen.
Yep.
Young ladies wearing next to nothing except for long sequin shiny robes. A contingent that are wearing plastic bubble things over their heads.
Then weird stuff. Snake people.
Yes, the lizard men who have the eyes in their mouths for some reason.
I could not keep track of how many costumes I was seeing or how many characters I was seeing just based on the costumes.
Right.
It was quite something. It was weird.
And then you have General Clytus, whom we mentioned earlier, with the golden mask and the single golden arm that does not move for reasons that are never explained.
Every scene he's in, you see his golden arm, it's just lying there like a dead fish.
And then you have Ming the Merciless in a variety of costumes over the course of the movie. But
so many costumes.
Beautiful entrance.
Now, Steve.
Yes.
There are definitely a lot of problematic things with this film.
There are.
Can we just take a moment? Can you please inform me about Ming the Merciless?
Yes. Yeah, he is the villain from the comic.
I'm going to ask the follow-up question that I think everyone who has listened to this podcast so far is asking. Is he supposed to be of any sort of Asian persuasion?
I'm afraid I do not know the definitive answer. My supposition is that the original character design from the comic was intended to be of that persuasion, and that when they made the movie, they wanted that look for the villain.
But not that kind of actor.
But not that kind of actor.
This is the problem with some of these films that we go back to, folks. There are certain practices that were allowed in the past that would never fly by today's standards, and one of them is taking a Swedish actor and casting him as Ming.
Yeah.
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 And also having a little person as a pet. Just a sidebar. But I felt it was important to point out because when we see the princess, she's walking around with her little person on a leash, who's not very human, let me point out, just for the record. Whatever the heck his costume is, it's not human. And by the way, all of this leads to the throne room scene, what I can only describe, folks, as the stupidest scene I have seen in a long time.
If you are talking about the absolutely amazing fight scene, then yes.
By that, you mean the football fight scene.
Yes.
So Flash, it doesn't even matter what the context is. At some point, they throw something to him and he catches it and it looks like a football. And he gets into this fight scene with everyone in the throne room who's fighting him. And he treats it like a football game.
And it works, right? As in his tactics are actually successful.
Sure, they are. They are successful for most of it.
The villain's reaction to it is phenomenal. Clytus calls his guards over and says, "You fools, he's playing some sort of barbaric game. Match him like this," and squats down. And then they do. But Zarkov keeps throwing him these green egg-like things. He keeps throwing them and hitting the guards on the head, and it works beautifully. We get a couple of brilliant shots where Voltan keeps tripping a guard or hitting him over the head and then acting as though nothing's out of the ordinary here.
Yeah, he's enjoying the whole scene.
But then Zarkov mistimes one of his throws, shall we say, and clonks Flash in the head.
Then he's captured, and then he's sentenced to death. Thankfully, the princess finds a way to keep him alive by having the doctor, we assume it's a doctor, inject him with something right before he gets murdered.
The royal physician.
They take the time to make a tombstone for him.
Yes.
And they put him in a coffin.
Yeah.
And then they bring him back to life. And my favorite line from this section is, "Put on this uniform before the lizard men come to bury you." What am I watching? What is this, Steve? And then, of course, they put him in a costume. And it's not like he's a tall, blonde Earthling. Yeah. You never covered his face or his hair.
No.
There are so many things that are going on in this film, Steve. What we have is essentially fighting in between different people who run different worlds. We have the Peter Pan Brigade, run by Timothy Dalton. And then we have the Hawkmen, or as I call them, the Bird People. And they have their own thing. And all of this, there's just a lot of inner political turmoil.
And that was done by design. The whole idea is that Ming maintains control over all of these people by constantly having them bicker with one another. It's not until Flash arrives and actually gets them to work together that they're able to rise up against him.
It is hard to get into unless we spend 2 hours talking about the plot of this film. This is not a short film. This film is just shy of 2 hours. I will say that for anybody who's paying attention, the role of women in this film is not something you're going to be happy with.
No. This one suffers from something that we have encountered before, where they are supposed to be strong, independent, I'm doing my own thing women, but they were written by men, which means, sex all the time, please.
It's nothing but sex.
Yes.
And it was, I don't want to say it was upsetting you. It was just like, come on, who wrote this? This is terrible. Because they have both of the women. Let's just talk about the two women.
Yes.
Princess
Aura and Dale Arden.
They are strong, independent. Princess Aura controls a lot of things behind the scenes. She fixes things. She manipulates things. We have a scene where our travel agent fights a bunch of different people, shoots a bunch of different people, and you're like, yes, that's what we want.
Her escape scene is great. As you say, she gets out, she gets hold of a gun, she tricks the guards. Did you notice that during that entire first part of the escape scene, she was carrying her shoes? She had her shoes, she would set them down, she'd do something, pick them up, and move on. It wasn't until much later that she actually stopped to put them back on. Because she knew she'd need them later, but she needed them off now for sneaking purposes.
Princess Aura, I actually find her quite fascinating. She's managing things on her own. She's figuring out how to manipulate the system that she works in. But again, it's all about the sex. There's a weird scene with Flash Gordon flying something that she's teaching him how while climbing on top of him. And it's just like, what is happening right now?
The marvelous line that she says during that scene as she's teaching him to use the two controls is, use your fingers this time. Oh, be careful. It's sensitive, like me.
Men wrote this, and it upset me to watch. We did get to go to the Ewok village, as I called it, or Peter Pan's lair. That was fun for about 5 minutes. There was a great moment where Flash is fighting with Timothy Dalton, and then he tries to escape. And I have to say, Steve, this was the moment where I'm like, you're an idiot. He has a sword in his hands, and he throws it away as he goes into the forest.
I questioned that as well.
At some point, Flash escapes an exploding city on what is essentially a flying jet ski. There is a pillow fight between our ladies when they're mad at each other.
Yeah, I wasn't too fond of that scene. It's like, okay, you're upset with each other, but really, are we resorting to pillow fight?
And then, of course, cue the song is what I wrote. More Queen! More Queen!
The end sequence, starting with the war rocket Ajax that is sent out to collect Gordon when he tries to approach the city on his rocket cycle. That entire sequence, from that point through the end, I love. It has got some of my favorite shots out of the entire movie. The one in which the rocket is at this corner of the screen. We have the swirling cloud in the middle. And then up here, we've just got thousands of black dots representing Hawkmen in the sky waiting to attack. Love that shot. I love the whole fight of the Hawkmen versus the Ajax. Again, Queen soundtrack. The guards suffer from the same thing that stormtroopers do. They can't hit anything. So there's a lot of lasers going this way and that way. It's phenomenal. And then you get the wedding scene, because Ming has decided to marry Dale Arden. There is something that makes me smile and fills me with joy every time I see them say, oh, let's see what Mingo City's broadcasting. And they tune it in, and it's Brian May's guitar playing the wedding march.
Our main bad guy is stabbed by a ship, which is pretty great. I will say that is pretty great.
This is my second favorite shot of the entire movie, I think. No, I think this is my first favorite. The one which we've got the Hawkmen and the Ajax separated by the cloud. That's my second. My first is where we have the shot of the wedding scene, and we're looking out over the balcony. The streaks of lightning suddenly drop out, and you become very aware that there is a smoking rocket coming straight at you. I love the fact that some of the blasters from the city knock out the front windows of the rocket, and at that point they turn on the wind machines, and Sam Jones covers his face, his hair is blown back, because there's no more windscreen. I love that detail. I love that as the rocket finally gets close enough, Ming looks up and goes, Gordon! And then Dale goes, Flash! They run in their separate directions. Before she disappears through a door, Dale cannot help herself but turn and go Flash! Before disappearing. And now, if I may, I would like to speak to the movie villains out there for just one moment. Hey, so your plans have gone awry, and now you find yourself running away from a spaceship or other large vehicle that is careening straight at you. I understand you want to run, you want to live to fight another day. Please, whatever you do, don't run directly away from the ship that is coming towards you. You will not outrun it. I don't care if it's a rocket with a large pointy needle on the front, or a gigantic circular donut thing that's rolling towards you. Run sideways. Do you some good. As you say, we have a fantastic shot where the model of the rocket is thrown into the side of the model of the balcony, and we get a couple very quick cut shots that imply that Ming has been impaled on the front of the rocket, which I love how that is shot. And I say that because if this were remade today, they would totally show the impaling.
Yeah.
I do believe. I vastly prefer that it's just the suggestion, the way it was edited.
The people celebrate Peter Pan, Timothy Dalton becomes the ruler, sharing with everyone else. They said they can stay, but our lovely lady says, I'm a New York girl.
It's a little too quiet around here for me.
More Queen music.
Yep.
And then a maybe continuation.
Yes. The end? And a question mark appears as a gloved hand reaches into frame and takes Ming's ring out of the rubble.
Dun dun dun. What did people, critics, the box office, what was that like for this film in, 1980?
1980. Overall, the reviews were on the good side. Those that did not like it pointed out that we have some very two-dimensional characters doing some very two-dimensional things in the script. There's not really any substance behind it. Others liked that, and I wish to read you a quote from what I hope would have been friend of the podcast, Roger Ebert. At a time when Star Wars and its spin-offs have inspired special effects men to bust a gut making their interplanetary adventures look real, Flash Gordon is cheerfully willing to look as phony as it is. I don't mean that as a criticism. It's fun to see it done with energy and love. Fans had similar reactions. Those that enjoyed it just because, hey, this is kind of mindless. We have a bunch of Star Wars, Alien. There is some realistic, gritty sci-fi out there. This is not that. This is just campy fun. And that was appreciated by some. There were those, Mike Hodges, the director himself, noted that there was a good chunk of the audience that didn't get it because they were used to the gritty sci-fi. So seeing something like this was just not really what they wanted or not what they anticipated. Money-wise, it did okay. It had a budget of somewhere between $20 and $27 million. I am not sure why the variance is there on that. But it ended up grossing $46.5 million between the US and the UK. When De Laurentiis initially came up with this, he wanted to make a trilogy, and in fact had discussed the sequel with Peter Wyngarde, who plays Clytus. Very early on, before the script was finalized, he and Peter met and they were discussing the sequel, and Clytus was supposed to be the villain in the sequel of the movie. He wasn't going to appear in this one at all. That obviously changed by the time the movie was made, but that was the original intent, which is why the black hand that grabs the ring at the end is supposed to be Clytus. It's not, obviously, because we see him killed, but that was kind of Dino De Laurentiis' original vision. There was a problem that came during the latter part of the production because Sam Jones walked off set. According to Mike Hodges, they were shooting, did some shooting up until December, up until Christmas time in 1979, and then they took a break for the holidays, and when they came back, Jones didn't. So De Laurentiis sued Sam Jones for a breach of contract because he was refusing to come back to set. Sam Jones countersued De Laurentiis, stating that the salary payments that he had been promised had not been made on time and were not being made properly. And because of the two suits, it was decided that until all of that was settled, Jones could not return to work on set. He was not there for post-production. Depending on who you talk to, it was either a handful of lines. Other people say, no, it's actually most of Sam Jones's lines were redubbed by another actor named Peter Marinker. And this upset Jones even more because now, to at least some degree, that's not his voice that you're hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the bad blood between Sam Jones and Dino De Laurentiis, there could not be a sequel because they would not get Sam Jones back.
Wow.
Do you remember when we spoke about Flight of the Navigator, you mentioned that there was a documentary called After the Navigator?
Yes.
I believe there was. There is a documentary called Life After Flash that goes into the story of the making of the film, the falling out between Jones and De Laurentiis, and what Jones has been doing since. I don't think I need to tell you that this movie has a huge cult following, which has kept it alive, whether it's the soundtrack, the costumes, both. This movie appeals to a large group of people who love it for what it is, and I count myself among them. They brought a comic strip to life. I love the sets. I love the costumes. I love the silliness of the characters. I love the models, which you know are models and look like something right out of the 1930s comic strips. I liked this movie when I was younger. I still love it now. I know that you've said earlier that you didn't get it when you were younger. and you still don't quite get it now, did you at least enjoy it?
Yes and no. I think that if you're going for campy, this is your movie. For sure. It is 100% campy. I didn't dislike the movie. I found it entertaining. Mm-hmm. Is it the best movie that I've seen? No.
No.
Not by far.
No.
Not close in any way. The question comes down to, do I like it? Does it hold up? I think that, do I like it? I continue to be unsure. I don't know if I like this movie. I think I liked aspects of this movie. Some of the, stuff like Ming, that's problematic. The ladies, pretty much any lady in this film is problematic. So that stuff was hard to take in, right? I can't separate that from the film. If you like campy and you like costumes, this is your movie.
Absolutely.
Does it hold up? No, I don't think it does. I have to stand by that. I don't think it does. I think, unfortunately, if you were to do a chart, this would offend so many different people. Like, just go down the list, Steve. They're all there. They're all getting offended.
I can understand that, yes.
It is a comic book. I'm not taking that away from it. You can be a campy comic book, but the way that women and other people are handled in this film, it's not quite great. But if you were to take that and put it aside on the inappropriate table,
okay,
I would tell you that it's enjoyable. It's fun. The music is fun. It is, you know what? It is ridiculous is what it is.
Yes.
It is 100% a ridiculous film. And if you go into it with that mindset, you're going to enjoy the heck out of this. If you want it's like the anti-Marvel universe.
Yes, that is a very good way of putting it.
There is no big plot. It is a ridiculous film, and you're going to watch it, and it's a spectacle with music and costumes and just wildness, and nothing really makes sense. It's a fun ride. If you like that sort of thing, you will like this.
Do you know who is a fan? And as of 2021, there were whispers that perhaps he would be working on a live-action remake of the movie. Taika Waititi. I have mixed feelings about this, because on the one hand, I love his work. And if anyone were going to remake this movie, yeah, I think he'd be a great choice to do it.
He's a hilarious director, yeah.
I don't think this needs a remake, though. I think this is one of those movies that the original is just so great at what it does, it doesn't need to be remade.
You don't want to see Chris Hemsworth play Flash Gordon?
No. As odd as that sounds, no.
I am a massive Taika fan. I think he's a brilliant director and a hilarious actor, hilarious writer. I could see him adapting this for sure. I can see why this would appeal to him. It would be very curious to see what he did with it. I guess it's easier for me to see that because I'm not as attached to the original. So I'm like, oh, Taika, can you do this and like fix all the things I don't like about this and make it fun? And no doubt, again, put Chris Hemsworth in it. Yeah. Okay, I'll give you the benefit of that. I don't know if it's going to be good because you like the original. So I think the good news is that you would have a fan of the film making the film.
That would be a plus.
Well, I guess we are just at a crossroads in reference to Flash Gordon.
We'll agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree.
Yeah.
What a way to start the year.
I'm okay with that.
So, folks, I mean, you have heard two sides of this story, of the Flash Gordon story. So, if you like what Steve said, you're going to love it. If you are hearing what I'm saying, then you're going to skip it.
I am kind of curious who has wandered into this podcast listening to this episode who hasn't seen the movie.
I mean, there might be some, you never know. A lot of the times people missed a movie, and so they'll listen to a podcast to learn about it because they never got around to watching it.
All right, well, in that case, sir, I would like to pass the baton over to you. What is it that you are going to start the year with?
I thought it would be very interesting for us to shift gears entirely from 1980s camp sci-fi fantasy, whatever Flash Gordon is.
Yeah.
I thought, let's just crank it a whole other way. We are going to go to the year 2000.
In the year 2000.
We will have a series of actors that you've heard of before. Michael Douglas, Tobey Maguire, and once again, Robert Downey Jr. in an interesting film called Wonder Boys. Folks, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for subscribing, or please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Feel free to comment. What do you think? Did you like Flash Gordon? Are you on Camp Steve or Camp Alejandro? So join us next time where we go to the year 2000 and we watch Wonder Boys.
Sit back, it's time to get groovy. Question, do you remember that movie?